Moms who know do less so they can focus on what matters most, taking care of themselves, their families, and living their God-given purpose. Moms who know are simplifying motherhood and focusing on the little things they can do that grow to have a huge impact. You are connecting with your family, your true self, and your purpose. You are a mom who knows. Hello, I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen. Thank you so much for being here on today's episode of the Moms Who Know podcast. So for today's episode, we are pulling one out from the vault. This is an encore episode with April Berezay that talks all about self-care. Now, this episode is one that I wanted to highlight and bring back to your attention because I learned so much from this episode, and they are really concepts that have changed the way that I think about myself and about the way I interact with the world. And I think you're going to find that you learned so much from this episode too. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you that positive role models are critical to showing our girls what's possible and helping them dream bigger. And so that's why we are happy to have this show sponsored by the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls podcast. It gives parents and teachers a great resource to help your girls learn and to really help instill confidence in them as they hear these amazing things that other women have done. It will help them to realize that nothing is holding them back from also going after their dreams. So these stories come from the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls books, and they're read by amazing women who have awesome stories of their own to share. And they share the stories of women like Oprah, Michelle Obama, Frida Kahlo, Julia Childs, so many more. And as you listen with your girls, you will find yourself learning from them and really being inspired to go after your own dreams as you help your children to do the same. So give the rebel girl in your life the confidence to dream bigger and go check out Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls on your favorite podcast player. And now let's get to today's show with April Berezay. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and our guest today is April Berezay. April, thank you so much for being on the call.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
I am happy to meet you and to learn from you today. So, April, let me tell you a little bit about her, guys. So she is a central business and fitness leader and has been for over 14 years. She studied exercise science, entrepreneurship, and business, which is such a cool combo, by the way. And she studied those at BYU. And she is a mom of 4, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We have in common our last sweet little babies were fun surprises. So we'll talk a little bit about her kids and the structure of her family. And that's where I'd love to start off, April. If you could tell us a little bit more about your motherhood journey. So tell us kind of the ages of your kids and how that all worked out.
Yes. So I have 4 children. And we got to have 3 children in a rapid 18 months. So my first is now 11. His name is Pike, and I have 3 boys. And then I found out and discovered I was pregnant just a year later with twins. And we were not expecting another pregnancy to happen so fast, let alone twins. So it was a pretty wild ride there. In the beginning, being married just a short time, under 5 years, and then having 3 children in 18 months was an incredible, it really launched my journey that we're going to maybe talk about a little bit together today, and provided so many lessons and opportunities for me to really unleash and discover aspects of my identity that I feel like was able to emerge in such a unique way, being a mother of 3 boys in 18 months.
I can only imagine. I have 3, I now have 4 boys, but I have 3 boys that are kind of close together, and just The boy energy, there's just something about that. There's the running around and the beating up and all that fun stuff that goes along with boys. And to have 3 in 18 months must have been quite the adventure.
Yes, it absolutely was. And it's fun. We just had a new baby girl. I had her in July on the 12th. So she's sitting here in my arms, fast asleep, and is about 6 weeks old. And it's incredible to also have the girl energy in our home, since we have had such intense, active, moving boys. And now we have this sweet, sweet girl, sweet sister.
That's
So
awesome. It's definitely a different feeling. Now, your daughter is 9 years younger than your twin. So tell us about that.
yes, she was a complete surprise for us. And I have been moving some pretty intense things forward in my business. I just created Women's Empire last year and discovered that I was pregnant. So it was really fascinating for me to navigate the acceptance of this pregnancy, number one, because I had a different plan, but God had another plan. And it's fascinating for me to be sitting here rocking her. I'm sorry, the emotions coming up, being able to do both, because that was something I wrestled with when I had the 3 kids under 18 months. That was a time that I felt like I was drowning, and there were pieces of me that wanted to conquer the world. And I became so angry inside, feeling like I was trapped, and that my life that I had prepared for being a mother wasn't that glamorous any from my perspective of changing diapers and living paycheck to paycheck and saying hello and goodbye to my husband and losing our connection and feeling like my whole world was literally crashing down. And so being able to sit here and hold this sweet baby girl in my arms and really understand, like, wow, I have come so far, and I have been willing to really surrender pieces of my personal journey to God's will, and then watching him do more with that than I even had could imagine for myself.
I love that. Now, obviously, it was hard having 3 babies all at the same time, but I can tell kind of a difference in you. So what, besides just the difference of having 3 kids or 1, baby, what's the difference mentally, and what did you have to go through to get to this place of surrender and to, you sound much more calm and not like you're drowning, and that you're kind of enjoying this whole baby aspect as you do it all over again?
Yes, it is a significant difference. And I actually have been in a lot of reflection and gratitude, recognizing the differences between who I was 9 years ago, raising 3 children all at once, and then who I am today. And what was that journey, and how did it get me from A to B? Because a lot of my circumstances haven't necessarily drastically changed, but the way that I see and my perspective and the deep wealth of my personal identity has grown in such intensity that it makes all the difference. So for me, as I was literally hitting rock bottom 9 years ago and just feeling buried alive, feeling overcome by just the debt. My husband and I were doing a newspaper route. He was working all day long just to keep up with the demands of life. And I was just so angry all of the time, mad that this was my situation, mad that my victim mindset continued to perpetuate walls in the way I was seeing and perceiving my situation, my circumstance, and myself. And so the first action I took, as I was recognizing that I was literally facing some pretty intense decisions as those things were just crashing. I knew that I had to hire a coach. That is what I required for me. That was the right path for me. I needed someone to help me see a different perspective, who could offer some different mindset tools for me and assist me in recognizing that I had the complete power to experience this with a different heart, and that I was actually the solution to what I was perceiving the problem, instead of my circumstance or my husband being the problem.
Wow. Okay. There's so much in there I want to talk about. So to start, I love it that you hired a coach, because do you know, I feel like I hear, probably because I listen to a lot of podcasts that are done by coaches, but I feel like I know a lot of people who are coaches, and yet I don't know anyone who's gone to a coach. So I love it that you are on the other end and have gone to a coach. So what was the catalyst? I mean, you said you needed a different perspective and you needed something new. Why did you go that route? There are lots of things that you could do differently. What made you choose a coach?
Well, that definitely is related to my pieces of my identity. So I know that I learn best when I am in a space where conversation and connection with others is happening. My husband is a person who learns best in his environment, if he's touching like tools and objects. And so we have very different learning styles that we go about, sometimes just getting to the same solution. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to be in conversations. I knew that I wanted someone to hold me accountable and also call me out. I wanted someone to call out the lies that I was telling myself and the things that I knew that I just couldn't see. That because I was perceiving my situation through a lens of darkness and fear and hopelessness, it was really hard to see, from my perspective, possibility and solutions. And even though my natural nature is to seek a plan quickly and get to a solution, and I'm driven by results, at that point in my life, I call it my warrior energy was just wounded. And I didn't know what dragon to slay, because all the dragons in my space were firing full guns blazing, and I became very overwhelmed. And in that overwhelmed state, it was very hard for me to see my way out of it. So I know that as a mother who cherishes her role as a mother, as a leader, and recognizes that this opportunity to raise children is one of the most noble and intelligent ways we can invest our time, energy, and resources. And yet my experience was crashing down. I knew that I needed to make some changes. I knew that I needed another person's perspective. And I knew that to honor myself, that meant being in conversations with other powerful men and women who have arrived at those solutions. And what did they do? What was different about what they were doing that I wasn't doing? And honestly, what that came down to was how I was living my commitments. And when I say commitments, that can mean a couple things for you as a mother. That can mean the way that you have self-care routines. That can mean the way that you're ruthlessly committed to your personal rituals. That can mean the way that you have commitments in what I call the 5 points of power, your body, how you are nurturing your relationships. If you are putting energy towards building your spirituality, how you are identifying yourself and nurturing those pieces of your divine nature, and how you see yourself in the spaces of contribution. For me, that looks like business, community, places that I get to support in my neighborhoods, that I have this deep calling to contribute on some level. And so as I began to map out my commitments or my ruthless rituals, I stopped being overwhelmed. So for me, anytime as a mother I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's because I am not honoring a self-care ritual or I'm not honoring one of my commitments. And therefore I lose my power. And if I lose my power, then it's easy for me to experience defeat.
Okay, that is so powerful. Now, that is something that I teach a lot about is self-care. And I love that perspective that when we're not honoring our commitments, which one of those you mentioned is self-care, that's what leads to feeling overwhelmed. Because I think that that's not how we think of it. We kind of think of it at the opposite. Like, I need to get rid of some of these commitments. I'm trying to do too much. And so I think the tendency is for people to say, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to get rid of something. And often as moms, one of the first things we get rid of is that self-care. Anything that we feel that is extra or, that it doesn't have to be done, we're quick to get rid of it. So to a mom that says, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I can't do one more thing, what would you say to her?
Well, just notice the words, I can't do one more thing. Even if I find myself speaking that, like, your world is created by the language that you speak. So for me, instead of declaring more of what I don't want or more of that defeat energy, for me, I get to ask myself powerful questions. And I've recognized that instead of offering myself statements, that if I can just switch that one opportunity, that one choice, instead of declaring statements, I shift into questions. And then eventually I get into powerful questions that will also allow my perspective to shift. And perspective creates possibilities. And so for a mother at home in overwhelm, the opposite of overwhelm is possibility. And for me, the skill set is to get there, to that energy of possibility, is a powerful question. So one of the questions I ask myself often is, what else is possible? What else is possible? Because I'm only looking at this from one dimension, likely, if I'm hitting the defeat energy. And so if I can position myself to look at my circumstance or situation from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, what else do I see? What else is possible? I want to give you an example. Yesterday, we got an invite to attend a special ceremony for one of our friends' daughters who was going on a mission. And so I got to create many solutions yesterday in a fast time. And instead of saying, well, that door wasn't open for me to utilize, or of course no one is available to help me, every time I try to do something, it never works out. I'm just speaking defeat all over to myself in that type of circumstance. I kept mapping for myself, okay, who else is available to support me right now? What else? Who else can I ask for the opportunity to help with my children? Because it's really important to me that I go to this. And so that's another piece that I find. If it's important to you, then you'll find a way. You'll find a way to make it happen. And one of the things I'm recognizing that I didn't let go 9 years ago, that I let go now, is if my self-care rituals are not honored, for me, that looks like commitments every single day. My bed sometimes goes a little bit unmade. The dishes in the sink might stay there a little bit longer. I get to ask for help in the form of support for my children. Sometimes I pay someone to come and clean my house. There are just radical other solutions that I've created in order to maintain the self-care commitments. And for me, I remember that the high tide rises all the boats on my water. So when mama's tide is high, I can elevate everyone around me. So when my personal power is cultivated and nurtured on a daily basis, that I'm coming to them with a high tide, then it positions me to elevate, to ascend, to sometimes surrender, at times be still and be quiet. It tempers me to activate what I require from the different circumstances and the flows of life that are coming into my space, from the children getting home from school, from what the baby requires, from what I wanted to see happen that day. I'm able to maintain that power. And I honestly got to just get radically honest with myself about what I really wanted. Because most of that time, the overwhelm, the defeat, the anger was coming because I kept violating and denying what I wanted to see happen or how I wanted it to work. I wasn't telling the truth. And then I was often offering other people, by not telling the truth, weak yeses. It was hard for me to say no. And it was absolutely impossible for me to ask for help back then. That was like the ultimate defeat for my warrior energy. If I asked for help, that would be a display of weakness, which was such a lie. So sitting here 9 years later, man, it's powerful for me to ask for support. It's powerful for me to recognize I'm worth it, to speak what I require to my husband, to communicate with him instead of war at him when he's at work, to communicate my requirements, the things that I need, because he can't read my mind. And those aspects have really made such a difference for me as a mother sitting here today.
So this brings up a question for me of kind of a hurdle that I could see that you had to get over, and I can see a lot of women having to get over, and that is this feeling of not being worth asking for help, not being worthy of spending money on themselves or, doing things for themselves. I think it's really easy sometimes to feel like, for one, I should be able to handle all this by myself. And for another, that I don't deserve that kind of help. And I remember when you were talking about, your experience and when you were at rock bottom, you said that you guys were in debt. I imagine that, even hiring a coach would be hard for someone in that situation when money's tight or you've got debt or whatever. And then to feel, it'd be hard to feel justified in spending that on yourself. So how do you get over that hurdle and feel like you are worth taking that next step?
Ooh, I love this question. Number one, so I wrote a book called Embracing the Feminine Warrior because one of the things I recognized in myself was that I had a lot of self-esteem. And growing up, I was very good at learning. I had great grades. I got into the college I wanted to. I got a lot of accolades from professionals and parents recognizing that I was an intelligent person. And so self-esteem was never a problem for me. But what I lacked was self-worth. And I find that women in general, if they're not clear or careful, they don't nurture their self-worth. They nurture their self-esteem. So number one, I just want to offer that distinction that self-worth is truly recognizing that you are perfect, whole, and complete the way that you are right now. And it's a deep knowing that you're of value, that you're lovable, that you're necessary to this life, and knowing that you're of incomprehensible worth, regardless of what you have. If you have X amount of children, if you have an X amount of dollars in your account, if you get married, if you build a business or don't build a business, all of those things to me are elements of self-esteem. But self-worth is recognizing that none of those things determine who you are at a core level. And so that was really a big piece of my journey over the last 9 years, is truly recognizing that I didn't have any self-worth, but I had tons of self-esteem. And then going on the journey to honestly accept my worth. So when I talk about having commitments in my identity, like I have a big yellow Post-it on my wall right now that I'm staring at with a whole list of pieces of my identity that I have put energy towards unveiling or remembering or resurrecting within myself, because it's that important to me to nurture my self-worth, not just when it feels good or it's easy to sit down and journal when my kids are asleep, but honestly remember on a daily basis. And for me, and I recognize that this is just my personal journey. So as I share this, the application to my share might look differently for you. I had to put myself in a situation that I would go all in on myself. And when I hired my first coach, I put my husband and I in a financial situation where we went in the negative $700. And I tell everybody this, I have nothing about it. I was that clear that this was my next step as I was talking to my coach and the conversation that we had. I knew that was my next step. Now, my husband, being an environmental learner, I'm a people learner. That seemed like the most ridiculous choice to him. But he supported me. And he's always supported me and letting me fly as high as I want to fly. Because honestly, he's at the core, I'm at the core of who he is. And so financially, it looked the opposite of what I thought. But because it was painful, because I had to put some skin in the game and go all in on myself, I did everything that he said. And I received that situation with so much gratitude and conversion. And that one choice launched me forward onto a path that my husband and I are now living financially free. And we get to tell our money where we want it to go. And we relish in really hearing from each other how we want to steward our abundance. And when the flows of the energy of money come in and go, like, we are at peace and we have harmony about it, and it's exciting for us. But in the beginning, it wasn't a harmonious choice between my husband and I at the beginning. But I went all in on myself. I had to put all the skin in the game. And honestly, that's what I required, because to grow in the integrity of my self-worth, I had to put myself in a situation that I would grow in recognizing my worth. And that was the first step for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I know that it's everyone's journey. And I tell that to my clients a lot of the times. This is just what I knew was right for me and what I
right.
do. And because I made that investment, I have seen it return 100-fold, not just financially, but in my relationship. It literally saved my marriage. My husband and I sat at the table of divorce 2 times. Hiring my coach was the best choice for me, because that radical accountability positioned me to be radically honest. And I wasn't doing that. I wasn't being honest with myself and with others. And when I say that, I was just taking on too much. I wasn't clear about what I wanted and where I wanted to go. And so it was easy to get overwhelmed when you're not clear, because you just easily offer weak yeses, and you're afraid to say no. And so I found myself in that cycle often. And so it was the foundation that I needed, after I feel like my foundation was totally gone after having the 3 kids in 18 months.
I just love that. I think there's so much in there about self-worth in particular. I think that that's so powerful. And I love this concept of going all in and having skin in the game. And like you said, the application might be different for different people. This doesn't necessarily mean everyone go out and hire a coach, not necessarily, but it means go out there and make yourself accountable and do those things that you need to take your life to the next step. So any final thoughts for our listeners?
There's so much for women who are on the path of just loving their life. I'm so dedicated to the principles that I feel are necessary for a woman to truly move forward powerfully, not just survive, but honestly thrive. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to just survive and just be content and happy with mediocre. I wanted to create health. Like, I wanted 6-pack abs after having twins, and I wanted to have a business and be a mother, and I wanted to work from home and like I just constantly wanted the ands. And so I just want to give you that invitation. If you are listening to this and there are pieces within your sphere that have been pricked, like, that is your spirit letting you know that there's something inside of you that's ready to be unleashed or be worthy of you to take significant time to notice, because you are so needed right now. The women of the world are so needed to speak up, to speak out. Anytime you nurture your own personal integrity, values, commitments, you honestly impact the future leaders of our world. Whether you stand at a pulpit or declare these things on Facebook, or just declare them to your children, the way that you honor yourself and your worth and your identity transcends and passes on to our posterity. And for me, like, the first wealth is health. And the way I measure my success is my posterity, it's my children. And to also watch them grow and learn in the cycles of life and progression. So I just know that as women, our call to arms is significantly important, and we are needed in every dimension of, I would call it the battlefield. You're needed. Every woman is needed on the battlefield to participate, contribute. She is loved, and she just has a significant place. I feel like the blessings that we enjoy at this time in this season of life, I mean, there's so many. And the steward of those blessings, I find, is so useful for women to translate forward to their families. So that's what I would say.
Oh, I love it. This has been a great conversation, a lot of takeaways for me personally, and I know for my listeners. So thank you so much. For people who want more, where can they find you?
The best place to find me is on Facebook. You can just add me as a friend under my name, April Berezay. I ship a lot of value and content there, and I have been doing that for almost 5 years. So anyone who wants to maybe learn some quick skill sets and tools, even if you just work through some of my videos, there's a lot of value and freebies that I've put there. And my business page you can find on my personal page too.
Awesome. Well, we will link to that. Thank you so much for everything you've shared with us today. And thank you everyone for listening to Moms Who Know.